Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. War and Peace. By Leo Tolstoy. War and Peace is an epic novel about Russian society between 1805 and 1815, right before and following Napoleon's invasion of Russia. It is widely regarded as one of the finest works of literature ever written, containing 559 characters, chronicling the lives of two prominent aristocratic families, the Rostovs and the Bolkonskis, as well as key military engagements and historical figures. At a party at the beginning of the story, we meet many of the novel's most essential characters. They include Pierre Bezukhov, the son of a wealthy count, and Andrew Bolkonsky, the son of a former military commander who was both intelligent and motivated. In a matter of minutes, Andrew is mortally injured and left for dead. When he returns home after his recovery, he discovers that his wife, Lisa, has given birth to a boy but was tragically killed during delivery. Andrew abandons Mary, his devoted sister, to raise his kid as he works to improve the Russian government. In the meantime, Pierre, the sole heir to his father's huge fortune, marries Helene, a lady he has only met a handful of times. Soon after their marriage, he discovers that she has been unfaithful, and he confronts her lover to a battle during which Pierre nearly kills the other guy. In the wake of this, Pierre is left feeling bewildered and disillusioned. Natasha Rostov, a young woman from a poor family, catches Andrew's attention and he falls head over heels in love with her. When Andrew's father learns of the relationship, he is enraged and asks that he postpone the wedding for a year. Couples decide to go on a trip together and Andrew heads out of town. Natasha falls in love with Anatol Kuragin while he is gone, and they plot to elope. Because of this, Andrew and Natasha are no longer together. Natasha tries to take her own life and gets sick as a result. During this time, Pierre falls in love with her and must determine if he intends to betray his oaths and wed her as Russia is being bombarded by Napoleon's army and Moscow is being evacuated by the Russians. The story begins in St. Petersburg in 1805 during a party hosted by Anna Pavlovna Scherer, the Dowager Empress Maria Feodorovna's maid of honor and close friend. Many of the novel's important characters are introduced as they arrive at the party. Pierre, Pyotr Kirillovich Bezukhov, the illegitimate son of a wealthy count, is dying in a hospital after a series of strokes. Pierre's estate will soon be at stake in a legal dispute. Pierre, who was raised overseas after his mother's death, is a generous but socially inept individual who thinks it's difficult to fit in at home in Petersburg. Many in attendance at the soirée are aware that Pierre is by far the count's favorite of his illegitimate children. Prince Andrei Nikolaevich Bolkonsky, husband of Lisa, a seductive socialite, will also be Pierre's guest. Frustrated with Petersburg's society, he decides to join Prince Mikhail Illarionovich Kutuzov in the upcoming war against Napoleon after learning that his wife is shallow and stupid. As a result, he decides to flee to the front lines. Taking place in Moscow, Russia's previous capital, the story focuses on the differences between Russian and European culture. Rostov ancestors are on display. They are a nice couple, but Count Ilya Andreevich Rostov and Countess Natalia Rostovna are constantly worried about their jumbled finances. They are the parents of a family of four. Infatuated with Boris Trubetskoy, Natalia Ilyinivna, a 13-year-old high school student who plans to enter the military as an officer. After being raised by the Rostovs as a vagrant, 20-year-old Nikolai Ilyich makes a heartfelt commitment to Sonia, Sofia Alexandrovna, his 15-year-old cousin. Vera Ilyinikna, the eldest heir, is cold and conceited, although she's engaged to Adolf Karlovich Berg, a Russian-German officer. Pyotr Ilyich, the youngest at 9 years old, aspires to join the military when he becomes 18. Lisa, the expectant wife of Prince Andrei of Bolkonsky, is left in the care of Prince Nikolai Andreevich and his rambunctious sister Maria Nikolaevna, who refuses to wed the child of a wealthy aristocrat because she is determined to remain by her father's side. Russian-French war preparations are depicted in the second part, which begins with a brief summary of this conflict. The Hussars Nikolai Rostov, an ensign by this point, joins in on the action during the Schön-Grabern encounter. Rostov insults Prince Andrei after meeting him through Boris Trubetskoy. He is especially enthralled with Alexander the Great's command of the English language. Vasily Dmitrich Denisov, Nikolai's officer, becomes a buddy and confidant through gambling, and the ruthless and possibly psychotic Fyodor Ivanovich Dolohov enters Nikolai's life. Battle of Austerlitz includes the heroic efforts of Bolkonsky, Rostov, and Denisov to save the Russian standard. In the book, the Battle of Austerlitz is an important event to discuss. In the midst of a battle, Andrei gets captured by the enemy and even sees Napoleon, the legendary figure. With regard to the 1812 assault, Tolstoy portrays Austerlitz as a first test for Russia, one that ended seriously because the officers fought for unimportant things like glory or renown rather than the higher excellences that would lead to a victory at Borodino. Nikolai Rostov and Denisov, an officer from his Pavlograd regiment, return to Moscow on leave in Book 2. He spends a lot of time at home during the winter. A gorgeous young lady has blossomed in Natasha's place. Denisov begins to long for her and makes a marriage proposal, but she rejects the offer. Despite his mother's pleadings, Nikolai refuses to marry an affluent woman in order to alleviate the family's dire financial situation. Instead, he promises to marry Sonia, his cousin and previous fiancée, who is now broke and living in a homeless shelter. In the Russian Empire, Pierre Bezukhov goes from a bumbling young man to the world's most desirable young bachelor after he finally receives access to his vast inheritance. Even though he knows it's wrong, he's convinced to marry Prince Karagin's daughter, Hélène, despite his reservations, Elena Vasilievna Kuragina. Her brother Anatole is thought to be in a relationship with Hélène, who tells Pierre she will never agree to be a mother for him. Dolokhov, who publicly mocks Pierre, is rumored to have an affair with Hélène as well. Dolokhov accepts Pierre's challenge to a duel. Due to the fact that Dolokhov has been trained to fight, Pierre wounds him. Pierre abandons Hélène despite her denials that they had an affair. Pierre joins the Freemasons as a last resort in his darkest hour. His past contentment is abandoned and he embarks on an introspective trip. When compared to Prince Andrei Bolkonsky, Pierre is a standout. Upon his return home from the military hospital where he recovered from his near-fatal wound, Andrei is shocked to learn that his wife Lisa had died while working with children. He is tormented by the guilt he feels for not being more attentive to her needs. Nikolenka, the couple's only child, lives. Prince Andrei does not return to the armed forces, but instead stays at his estate and tries his hand at a project that aims to streamline military operations in order to reduce the death toll on the Russian side of the conflict. Pierre pays him a visit and asks about God's whereabouts in this morally bankrupt society. Pantheism and the possibility of an afterlife preoccupy Pierre. His wife, Hélène, pleads with him to return her, and he agrees to comply with the Freemason regulations of absolution. In Petersburg social circles, Hélène establishes a reputation as a charming hostess. Having lately drafted military thoughts, Prince Andrei brings them to Petersburg in an attempt to influence either the emperor or those who are close to him. Natasha, meantime, is attending her first ball in Petersburg, where she meets Prince Andrei and instantly rejuvenates him with her vibrant charms. In the belief that he has rediscovered the meaning of life, Andrei proposes marriage to Natasha after a few trips to the Rostov family. Regardless, Andrei's father has strong feelings towards the Rostovs and will not allow his son and daughter-in-law to get married until after a year has passed. Natasha is first disappointed when Prince Andrei departs for a foreign country to heal from his injuries. She and Sonia are sent to Moscow by Count Rostov to see a friend of theirs. Natasha meets Hélène and her brother, Anatole, at the Moscow Opera, where she learns about their relationship. Anatole married a Polish woman and moved to Poland, where he now lives. Natasha piques his interest, and he decides to seduce her with the help of his sister. Eventually, Anatole is able to convince Natasha that he cares for her and they are able to make plans to flee together. Natasha breaks off her engagement with Andrei's sister, Princess Maria, in a letter. In the end, Sonia thwarts her plans to get away. At first, Pierre is worried about Natasha's behavior, but he soon realizes how much he likes her. Pierre's life appears to begin again as the great comet of 1811-12 passes the night sky. Natasha's breakup with Prince Andrei is accepted by Prince Andrei in a stoic manner. In order to restore his proposal, Pierre is told that he is unable to do so because of his pride. Natasha, humiliated by the incident, attempts suicide and is left critically injured. Natasha manages to get by in Moscow during this difficult time with the help of her family and her own religious views. At this point in time, Napoleon's army and the Russian military are expected to meet in battle. Pierre comes to the conclusion that Napoleon is the Antichrist according to the Book of Revelation, which he decodes. It is revealed that the old Prince Bolkonsky died while attempting to protect his land from French raiders. However, Nikolai Rostov shows up to the Bolkonskys' house to put down an impending peasant uprising despite the fact that no Russian military help appears to be available. While he is drawn to Princess Maria, he is mindful of his promise to Sonia. Petya, now back in Moscow, must persuade his war-obsessed parents to allow him to enlist. Napoleon is a major figure in this story, and the novel shows him to be both a mastermind and a would-be strategist in equal measure. Similarly represented is the all-encompassing might of the French army's 400,000 soldiers as they march across the Russian wilderness in the late summer to reach the outskirts of Smolensk. It is Pierre's decision to leave Moscow and go with a Russian ordnance party to see the Battle of Borodino. When they need ammo, he joins in the effort to deliver it. Eugene's artillery continue to pound Russian support columns, while Marshals Ney and Davout establish a crossfire with mounted guns stationed on the Semyonovskaya heights. For both sides, the combat degenerates into a harrowing slaughterhouse. Regardless, the Russians have achieved an ethical victory in the face of Napoleon's apparently formidable military. Napoleon is able to continue his march on Moscow the following day after the Russian military retreats. Anatole Kuragin and Prince Andrei are among the injured. A projectile hits Andrei in the stomach, injuring him, and Anatole loses a leg as a result. Both have been found dead, but their families are in a state of disarray that makes it impossible to tell who is who. Kutuzov has withdrawn from Moscow, but the Rostovs have stayed put until the last minute, even as Muscovites are given conflicting instructions on how to either flee or fight. At the same time that Count Rostopchin, Moscow's current commander-in-chief, is disseminating propaganda advising Russians to place their faith in religious symbols, he's also urging them to use pitchforks as a weapon of last resort, if necessary. In order to flee, he instructs his soldiers to burn the city down. It takes Natasha a while to persuade the Rostovs to load up their carts with the wounded from the Battle of Borodino, but they finally do. Injured Prince Andrei, unknown to Natasha, is one of the casualties. When Napoleon's Grand Army finally takes control of a liberated and engulfed Moscow, Pierre embarks on a bizarre quest to assassinate Napoleon. By donning the uniform of a worker, he may maintain his anonymity amidst the chaos. Natasha and her family are the only ones he sees as they leave Moscow. In order for him to understand how much he loves her, Natasha observes and grins at him. A French officer who fought at Borodino was saved by Pierre, but he was taken prisoner by the retreating French during his effort to kill Napoleon, after he saved a woman from being molested by French soldiers. One of the other prisoners, Platon Karatev, whom Pierre befriends, has an air of decency and integrity about him. A guy of total honesty, Pierre finally finds it in Karatev, who is also one of the most charming people he has ever met. Pierre's conversation with him gives him a sense of purpose. Pierre is forced to walk with the Grand Army during its sorrowful withdrawal from Moscow in the bitter Russian winter after witnessing French forces plunder the city and shoot Russians mercilessly. A Russian army finally frees Pierre after a brief battle with the French in which the young Petya Rostov was executed in real life, after a long period of struggle during which the feverish Karatev was shot by the French. The Rostovs have taken in and cared for Andrei, who was fleeing to Yaroslavl from Moscow. He's reunited with Natasha and his sister Maria, who he's never met before. He has lost all desire to live at this point. Despite Natasha's resentment, he finally forgives her before he dies. Hélène, Pierre's wife, dies from an abortifacient overdose as the narrative comes to a close. Natasha and Pierre are thrown together as the prosperous Russians rebuild Moscow. Natasha discusses the deaths of Prince Andrei and Pierre of Karatev with her friends. In the midst of their grief, they begin to form a connection. Pierre finally finds love and marries Natasha with the help of Princess Maria. The two-part epilogue begins with Pierre and Natasha's wedding in 1813. In the not-too-distant future, Count Rostov passes away, leaving his eldest son Nikolai in charge of the family's massively in-debt estate. In the end, it is Nikolai's job to protect the family from going bankrupt. His aversion to the idea of marrying for money comes close to winning out, but he does marry the now rich Maria Bolkonskaya and saves his family from financial catastrophe in the process. In the end, Nikolai and Maria decide to move to Bald Hills with his mother and Sonia, whom he supports financially. Nikolai Andreyevich, Nikolenka, Bolkonsky, Prince Andrei's son, is also raised by them. There are misunderstandings, but the couples Pierre and Natasha, Nikolai and Maria, remain steadfast in their devotion to one another. It is 1820 and Pierre and Natasha are on a trip to Bald Hills. Nikolenka and Pierre are both seen in the last sections of the novel to have a role in the Decembrist uprising. The first epilogue concludes with Nikolenka telling his late father that he would do something to make him proud. The second half of the epilogue comprises the narrator's condemnation of every sort of mainstream history that exists today. Tolstoy argues that the great man theory of the 19th century is inconceivable, given that the activities of saints and other remarkable people occasionally result in amazing historical events. Or perhaps, he argues, remarkable real-life events are the result of many smaller ones, each initiated by a large number of people. These lesser events are the result of an inverse relationship between need and free choice, need being founded on reason and logically recorded, and through free choice being grounded on awareness, which is inalienably irregular, he claims. Pierre Bezukhov, Pierre, whom numerous critics view as an assumption of Tolstoy himself, is a sympathetic figure in his status as a pariah to the Russian high societies. The Couragins, for example, stand out for their fancifulness and ambiguity in comparison to him. Because of his heaviness, Pierre is perceived as uncivilized and unwieldy by those in attendance at Anna Pavlovna's gathering. In his expulsion from St. Petersburg for over-the-top partying, and in his generosity toward companions and colleagues after he has given his fortune, we see his love of entertainment and generosity. Unlike his colleague Andrew, Pierre, despite his shrewdness, does not seem to be guided by logic. Pierre's exuberant outbursts, such as when he falls prey to Helene's self-serving and good desires, are unintentionally harmful to him. Even in the face of his overblown conviction that he is certain to be Napoleon's professional killer, Napoleon makes a blundering dash for Moscow. Though his feelings are characterized by admiration, Pierre's search for significance in his life is a central theme of the narrative. We're supposed to get the impression that his marriage to Natasha, his most recent wife, represents the pinnacle of his quest for goodness and moral clarity. Andrew Bolkonsky, Andrew, however as honorable a spirit as Pierre, contrasts from his companion in ways that make him an exceptionally particular character, and that delineate Tolstoy's philosophy of life. In the way he administers his estate, we can see that Andrew has an incredibly shrewd and analytical personality. Even after almost being slain at Austerlitz, he returned to the war and spent months assisting Speransky write a new civil code for Russia. Andrew, although being imprisoned, is emotionally honest and eager to examine his own secrets, as seen by his declaration in the novel that he is dissatisfied with his ethical and brilliant wife, Lisa. It doesn't matter how you look at it, Andrew's flaw is profound. He's separated from his love, which is both a source of strength and a source of debilitation. Even while Andrew is free of Pierre's crippling need for meaning in life, he is also unable to form meaningful relationships with others and is hesitant to forgive their transgressions. At the instant where Pierre first introduces Andrew, Andrew instinctively retracts his arm, despising the contact. This bodily reaction reflects Andrew's lifelong inability to be touched by people. Finally, he is a desolate guy even Natasha's love can't save. Natasha Rostova, one of Tolstoy's most wonderful creations, she embodies joyous vitality and the power to fully and profoundly embrace life. Natasha is the antithesis of Helene Kuragina, the first wife of her prospective spouse, who is stony and conspiratorial in nature. Natasha charms everyone she meets, from the visitors to the Rostovs who observe her puzzled remarks about her doll to Andrew Bolkonsky, Anatole Kuragin, and finally Pierre Bezukhov. Natasha's charm extends throughout her life, from her earliest years through her maturity. Despite her allure, Natasha never comes off as a tease who is only interested in men's attentions. Natasha arouses desire by acting spontaneously and by being in her own unique way, whether she is running and laughing in the fields or sitting in a musical playbox. Occasionally, her lack of sophistication causes her to be naive, such as when she misinterprets her fleeting feelings for Anatole and sets out to run away with him. Natasha, on the other hand, atones for her blunder with an earnestness that even Andrew on his deathbed can accept. While Pierre's otherworldly advancement is more intellectual and scholastic, Natasha has made just as substantial a leap. Prior to the novel's conclusion, she undergoes a major shift in her personality, becoming as clever as Pierre. General Kutuzov, the commander of the Russian forces fighting Napoleon, is one-eyed, aged, and obese, which makes him hardly the ideal military leader. Tolstoy's respect for Kutuzov, a brilliant strategist and a well-honed student of human instinct, is more notable than that for any other French or Russian government official, even more conspicuous than his admiration for the somewhat unaware Tsar Alexander. Kutuzov's cool rationality contrasts sharply with the egotistical and self-retained Napoleon's arrogant pomposity. To show his gratitude for a celestial sign after the Battle of Borodino, Kutuzov bowed down in reverence, an act of modesty for which even Napoleon would have been unsuitable. Kutuzov is motivated by personal conviction rather than a need for recognition, which makes his recent mistake only a small setback for him. Kutuzov, despite Napoleon's insistence that he is correct, is more realistic and cautious about the state of affairs. Despite the obvious benefits of doing so, he is hesitant to declare a Russian victory at Borodino, in part because his lengthy career's experiences have shown that the reality is constantly more perplexing than one initially considers. Kutuzov's ability to grasp the mysteries of presence has won our, and Tolstoy's, approval. Plato Karatev. Even though Platon Karatev appears only in a few of portions of this mammoth novel, his admiration from readers and analysts has lasted through the Soviet era and into the present day. He is one of only a few of characters in the novel to whom Tolstoy devotes a significant amount of time to portraying in great detail. Platon is the Russian name for Plato, the Greek thinker. Platon caught up in the present moment, unconcerned with the past and irresponsible to the point of forgetting what he said just a few minutes before. Similarly to the small pooch accompanying Russian political captives, his fondness for all living things shows him to be more of an intuitive thinker than a rational one. He spouts Russian sayings that are full of wisdom. As Pierre has been demoralized and misunderstood by many sections when he meets Platon, this image of an extraordinarily joyful character shines out strongly. As a response to Pierre's deep and profound questions, Platon appears as live evidence that the human pursuit for pleasure can be successful. Russian author Leo Tolstoy was born in 1828. One of the best writers of realistic fiction of his day, Tolstoy was an insightful social and moral thinker. When Tolstoy was just 9 years old, he was orphaned and raised by tutors from Germany and France. He enrolled in Kazan University at the age of 16 but dropped out after a short time due to his dissatisfaction with the program. A brief, fruitless attempt to improve the lot of the serfs on his land did not deter him from plunging headlong into the frolics of Moscow's upper crust of socialite society. Tolstoy first saw Cossacks in the Caucasus in 1851, when he enlisted in his brother's military. In his work The Cossacks, published in 1863, he depicted the natural existence of the Cossacks with empathy and poetic reality. The two autobiographical novels that Tolstoy wrote while serving in the regiment were immediately well appreciated. Upon his return to St. Petersburg, now Leningrad, Tolstoy developed a passion for the education of the working class and opened an innovative elementary school. In 1862, he married Sofia Andreevna Bears, an 18-year-old daughter of a wealthy Moscow family, at the age of 18. It took him the next 15 years to raise his big family of 19 children. War and Peace, 1869, and Anna Karenina, 1871, were both written when he was managing his land, 1877. Tolstoy began his lengthy road toward moral and social clarity by writing the incredibly honest and powerful novel Confession about his spiritual discontent. He discovered them in two Christian gospel principles: love for all people and resistance to evil. Tolstoy courageously criticized social inequity and repressive forms of government and church power from within despotic Russia. His eloquent works, which were translated into many languages, captured the hearts of people from all walks of life in many other nations, many of whom came to Russia to seek his help. After years of being plagued by the difference between his teachings and his own personal prosperity, Tolstoy finally walked out on his family one night at the age of 82. Sadly, he succumbed to his illness 3 days later and passed away on November 20, 1910, at a small train station hundreds of miles away. His morality was celebrated around the world after he died. He continues to inspire people today with the power of his ageless and global work. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.